Welcome to Inside Builder channel, problem solvers, Python experts, and my dear friends. Making machines to listen. Why will you want to do this? It's a very simple answer. You will make the machines to listen to process your input, process your data, work for you. Without the input from you, the machines cannot do anything. This is the reality. Whether it is the artificial intelligence model that you're using right now, whether it is ChatGPT or Bard, you need to still give the inputs in the form of text, audio, or video. The models cannot still take any of the input that is available out there and directly process it. It doesn't have that ability to do that. So till the artificial intelligence models get the ability to directly take the data, we are in control. So in what formats we are in control? The data, the world around us can be put into these formats. So there is video format, there is audio format, there is text and pictures format. Just visualize it. Whatever things that are happening around you can be captured through these modes. It can be written as text, it can be captured as video data, audio data, and it can be made into still pictures, and all these things can be given to the code, the various AI models that and you can actually process it. Or even before AI models, there were face recognition models, and there were cases where you can recognize the text and you can do the optical recognition of the text. So these are all not new. The reason why I'm making this video is that today it is extremely simple to get the inputs in multiple ways. So here I'm going to, in this video, in next 20 minutes, I am targeting to discuss 5 different ways of providing the inputs to the machine, to the code that you're going to write. The most used method is the command line method, where your script is accompanied with some options and that becomes input. Second is in execution, meaning the code starts executing and in the middle of the code there's an input that is requested. Third is the file data. So you have a file and you are going to read the file and you are going to execute it and get the data from it. These are the 3 usual methods that you don't need any additional support. As such, it is built into the programming languages. When it comes to these 2 options, that is using the API format, that is application programming interfaces, to get or provide the input over the internet. So that's where this get and post comes into picture. And then there is GUI based text box or input options. For these 2 options, you will need additional libraries or dependencies. So in case of Python, the programming language that I'll be using, the in execution input method is done using input function. The command line arguments are taken using the argv argument. The file data is read using the open function. We'll be seeing an example of all these things. The GUI text box will be supported using PySimpleGUI. You'll be seeing how simple the code is and how easily readable it is. And finally, the requests based API, we have get and post requests that we can build using Bottle framework, that is REST framework that is built based on bottle.py. It's a single script that you have to just download from the internet and you will be able to work on it. Before we proceed further, what an input requires? Yeah, input also requires certain things. It requires a variable. Any input that you're going to give has to go and sit inside a variable. Variable is like kind of a bucket. It's a memory location where which stores the data that you're providing as input. Also, there has to be a way to show the data back. It's one thing to take the data and do some processing, but if you don't show it out, then how will you know something has happened to your data? How will you know that the machine has done the work for you? So it has to give you some output, right? And finally, supporting libraries. As I was telling, uh, here itself there is a supporting library called PySimpleGUI, and there is a supporting library called Bottle. And when you're going to have different kind of formats like pictures, videos, and audios, all this data have different formats and different way of encoding that is inside this data. So I am right now not discussing the details of encoding the various formats, just to make this video brief. However, if you have any questions on these areas, you can always leave a comment down below, and I will try to provide you the feedback as soon as possible. My intention here is to show you to get the inputs from the user in multiple ways. And programming is one place where you can do the same thing in very many different ways. So let's jump into the code right now. Let's start with taking inputs from CLI. Here we can you can see that it's having some 23 lines of code, and this is going to do multiple things. So let me directly dive into the execution here, and let me zoom in a bit so that you guys can see it better. Just give me a second. I'm executing this code, Python, and I'm saying taking input underscore API. So sorry, taking input CLI, inputs CLI. And the moment I use this taking input CLI, you'll see that I'm getting an error here. And the error is, it is telling that index error list index out of range. Basically, the reason why I'm getting this error is that I need to give an additional command line input here. So once I change this input, I say additional data. Once I provide this particular word, additional data, you will see that my code is executing and I am also getting the output. So the command line argument 1 is taking inputs.cli, that is the script name itself. And the second is additional data, that is the text data that has been provided by me. And apart from that, you also see that the code is still asking me some more information. It is saying give your input here. So let's try. Let me give the name. The moment I say let me give the name, the code further executes and it says the text received from the input function is let me give the name. So here in the code, 23 lines of code, we have done multiple things. We have taken the inputs from the command line interface. We have taken the input using one of the input functions during the execution of the code, and the program did not stop there. It further went and it started taking the input from data.txt file. So what is there in this data.txt file? Let us take a look at that. So the data.txt file contains two lines. It has a name and it has a size. And these two lines have been printed out here. So basically, the program was able to read this file, take the lines out of this file, and it is able to print it out in the execution time. So how is this able to do all this stuff? Let's go to the code here. In case of Python, there is a module called as sys module, which has a attribute called as argv. This argv is a variable that is provided inbuilt in the Python programming language, and this argument is this particular argument variable, argv variable, is going to take all the data that is provided after the Python word. So when you're going to execute the script in the command line interface, it is going to take, you will be giving it as Python, and you'll be giving the script name, and then you have to give the additional data. So argv is a variable that can take the input from the command line interface itself, and you can use the indexing option. I'll be explaining the indexing option later once I introduce the data structures and the way to store data inside the code. There you will be diving into it. As of now, This is going to be the introduction. After that, we print. So print is a function inside the Python programming language that helps you to show the data. So by now you must have seen the format that I'm using. Every aspect of a programming language, the keywords, the functions that they are implemented, all has a particular purpose. Nothing is written for sake of fun. Everything is written for some activity, to do some work, to make someone's life easier, to solve a problem. So at this moment, we have seen the argv. What is the variable doing? We have seen that the print function is printing the data out to the user so that the user can see. User is you and me. And then comes the input function. So the input function, you see that it is taking an input here. Okay, this particular input is again going to be shown to us. So here, this is the input that we are given here, but it is getting shown to us immediately. So input function also shows some of the information that we want to share to the user. And then we can wait for the user to give the input. So we gave the input here. So let me execute this code again. And you'll see that give your input here, it actually puts this words here. Basically, it prompts us. And then if I say this is a prompt, after I enter this series of characters, I press enter, that series of characters actually gets printed out back here. It is the print function is again used, and we can see that the value that you provide, that this is a prompt, is the value that we provided. It got stored in the data3 variable. This is what I was talking about. Input requires a variable where it can take the data and store it. Take the data from the user and store it. So that is what you're seeing here. After the data is stored, the data has to be shown. It might be processed or it may not be processed, but the data has to be shown. Here we are only talking about the input handling, right? I am not talking about any kind of processing here. This video, the idea is that you guys can understand in a single video that what are the various options that you have got to get the input, so that more and more complex information that you are going to work later becomes easier. Moving forward, after that input has been discussed and the input has been printed out to the output, there is further the code executes and it says that we will see the input of the data.txt file. So this is the output that again the code provides us, and internally the code is going to read the data from this location. This is the location or the path of data.txt file, which is containing these two lines. Using the open function, we are reading the file using the mode R and encoding UTF-8. So functions are the building blocks of any programming language. So by now you must have understood this. In this one program, we have already spoken about almost 3 to 4 different functions like print, input, open, and also there will be 2 more functions. That with is a keyword that we are using. Read lines are another one function that we are going to, another one method that we are going to discuss about. After we open the file using these arguments, I'll be explaining what is arguments once we start discussing about the functions in detail. Here we are going to open the file, this data.txt file, inside the Python code. And when you are opening something which is in the real world, so data.txt file is something that is in the real world. That has been written by me. It has been typed by me and it has been saved by me as .txt file. The Python code does not know what this .txt means actually. You and I know that it is a text file, but Python code or the machine itself doesn't know. You have to tell that this is going to be using some kind of encoding, and the machine or the code has to open the file in the read-only mode. It should not edit the file. and where the file is located. All this information has to be provided. Apart from this, you can still provide more information, which I want, I urge you guys to take a look at it by looking at the Python documentation. Once the file is open, the next step that you have to do is to read the file. And to read the file, it's straightforward. There are a couple of methods. Among them, read and read lines are frequently used. The moment you use this read lines method on the file data, so here when I use this construct with open, providing the file path, I can actually open the file using the variable called as raw. So this is a different kind of assigning the data of the file to a variable. So here the raw is the variable, and we are using two keywords, with keyword and as keyword. So by now you are seeing this. The way we are thinking about the programming language is completely different. If you see about the various other introduction of the programming languages, what I found is that the more you understand the basics, the more you will be at the base level only. Only when you start looking at how others have written the code, and once you start reading little more complex code, then only you will be able to develop yourself. So that is one of the reason why I am trying to provide all this information and much more complex information in a couple of minutes to you guys, so that you can start processing. And also in parallel, you have to start researching. This is one of the key aspects of these series of videos. Once you read the lines that you are going to see here, this is going to be a list. Again, the list is a data structure that I will be introducing in a couple of videos down the line. But as of now, I want you guys to, if you're new to Python, then this might be something new for you guys. But if you're already if you know Python, then this is going to be pretty simple. So you see that this is a data structure of type list. And once you have a list, you can use something called as a looping, and you can start printing the data inside the list. The looping, the data structure, all these things will be covered down the line. But you saw right now that you can work using, you can get three different inputs. You can get the inputs through the execution, you can get the inputs through the command line, and you can get the input from file data. All these things can be done. Apart from these three methods, there are two other methods, that is using the GUI method, that is graphical user interface. So how are you going to do that? In order to use the graphical user interface, we need to have some supporting libraries. So the two most easily usable supporting libraries are the PySimpleGUI library for creating GUIs that you can use it inside your Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X operating system. You will get a GUI. I'll be showing it to you in a couple of seconds. And when you want a web-based GUI, that is, if you want to build a website, or if you want to create an API through which you want to interact with your application, then the most simplest web framework in Python is called as Bottle. And believe me, you can just download a single file and you can start building on top of it. And that single file, you can get it from this particular link. And zooming in so that you guys can see it better. All you need is the single file and you can start building on top of it. Let me now go to the VS Code and let me show you the PySimpleGUI output. The idea of PySimpleGUI and the web framework or the API that I'm going to show you is purely for you guys to understand a different way of giving the inputs. I would suggest that take this introduction and try to build on top of this code. You'll be able to understand the background by reading through the code, and then you can, if you're interested to continue in the path of building GUI or building web frameworks, then start exploring further. So let me execute the PySimpleGUI first. So let me start Python taking inputs underscore GUI.py. Once I execute this, you'll see that there is a small window that has occurred here, and this small window has very similar kind of UI. There is a minimize, there is a close, there is no maximize option, and it is saying that it's small here. It is saying that your typed character appear here. So I'm going to say this is what I have typed, and after I do this typing and I say display, you'll see that whatever I typed here, it is getting displayed here. So this is one of the ways you can interact with the GUI and provide the input to the machine. And once I provided the input to the machine, it actually updated the value here, and also you can see here that whatever data I provided in the GUI also got updated in the code area also. So understanding what is going on in the backend and also what is happening in the front end, that is the GUI, is very, very important. Let me close this out, and let me actually run through the code of PySimpleGUI for you guys to understand. Any Python module, I'll be diving deeper into module as we go further into the discussion, but I'm giving you an overview right now in this discussion. So any kind of module that you are seeing in Python is actually a file. It's in Python, all the modules are files or group of files or folders inside which there are multiple files that gets imported. So yeah, module is not something something different from a regular file. It's a file like taking underscore inputs.gui.py. So it's a file like that, and from that file, inside that there will be objects, there will be some kind of data types or some kind of variables or functions that we import. So in this case, we are importing the entire module called PySimpleGUI or library, and then we are going to use that library to build our GUI. So this is the area where we built our layout. Let me execute the code again so that you can see what is going on and I can explain it to you easier. Just a second. Here, whatever you are seeing, the introduction, your typed characters appear here, the display, exit, and the text box, everything has been built using this 4 lines. And the introduction that you saw at the top has been used using this particular sg.window object. After that, the loop starts. The GUI is running continuously. Yeah, you heard me right. It is continuously getting refreshed, meaning this GUI here that you are seeing here is placed again and again by the Python code in this particular location on the window, and that is why you see this while true. And this while true function can break anytime whenever the event changes. So in case if the event is not display, if it is exit, then there is a break. If the event is display, then we say that on the location of window output, update the values. So the location of window output is sg text. Okay, and the key is given as output here. So if you go here, this area, your typed character appear here. This is the area where the data gets updated. So if I say data goes here, and if I say display, the data goes here, gets updated here. And if I say exit, the break function is called and the code exits. You have seen one more way of input. Let me go to the third way. And this is going to be the most different kind of thing that you have seen. Let me execute that. And this is going to be the web framework way of getting the inputs. And we are going to use taking input underscore API.py. And this is going to start a server. Whatever you're seeing here is a WSGI ref server. This is a kind of a REST API server. What is a REST framework? What is a SOAP framework? What is a web framework for that matter? All these things I'm not going to touch. This is a very different way of looking at programming, right? See, As I was telling, everything is to solve a problem. And you might be wondering, but Kamal, you are though creating more problems to us. You are not giving a lot of information. You are just throwing things to us. For a moment, give it a moment and think. Once you know that what is available, what are the options that is there for you, then you can start thinking about researching on that topic. There are some 6 to 7 options that in case of taking inputs. So here there are 5 options. 2 options I have not discussed, and in these 5 options, you think, okay, in the future project you are going to use a GUI based option, or you are going to use CLI based option. You want to do further research, then you can start doing it. But this is a basic starting point, right? So that is the intention of introducing all these things. And yes, I am actually creating a problem for you guys that you can solve, and then you can learn from it. That's the output that I'm looking for. The moment I had run this particular server, the server is ready to serve the data that is already built into, I mean, coded into this particular almost 30 or 35 line programming code. And here it is printed hello world. And you can see that I'm using the local host server 8080. This is not getting served from the internet. It is getting served from my local machine. And if you guys are new to web framework, if you are new to localhost, then I would suggest to do some research on what is a web framework, what is localhost, what is the background of why localhost can be also changed to 127.0.0.1 and still it will work. So these things I want you guys to still understand. Okay, now moving forward, here you see that there is an output, but our idea is to actually give an input, right? So how are you going to do that? It's very simple. What you're going to do is, if you're going to go to the local host again, and if we go to hello, and if I'm going to add one more slash, and I'm going to say this is data. And once I do this and press enter, you will see that it is able to provide me the data back. So instead of saying hello, this is data, I'm going to give a name. I'm going to say Jerry. The moment I say Jerry here, the input I'm giving it in the URL, and the output is getting printed here. Not just that. So let me actually use a different URL. Let us say get data. The moment I say get data, I am getting a new page itself, where it is asking me for the name and age. I'm going to give an age here. Let us make it a little more sensible and small. And once I say send data, it is actually returning me a new page where it is saying your information is Tom and your age is 23. And all this thing is being done using this series of code here. The code imports the module called as bottle, and the bottle code is also shown to you in a second. This particular series of lines that you are seeing here is called bottle.py. This is the file that we downloaded from this particular location. And once you have this file inside your folder, you can start working on it directly. So if you go to this particular location, and let me open one more shell so that you guys can see what is happening. Let me go into the shell, and let me go into the code as well as the data that I'm using. All will be shared with you guys. You don't need to worry about that. The link for the data is available in the description below. It's a GitHub link. You can get the data from there. Let me do an dir right now, and you'll see that there is a file called as bottle.py. So this is the file that contains the entire web framework background, the code that is required to run this particular server. So the server that is running here, you can see the output here. The data that you are also giving here is also getting updated. All these things, you see the Jerry that I updated, the Tom, the post and the get, all these things are updated here. As I was talking about, here we saw many different types, almost 5 different types of input methods in Python. And believe me, similar kind of input methods are available in other programming frameworks also. Whether it is JavaScript, whether it is Rust, Go, C, C++, they may not be available as simple as like this. There might be a lot more code that needs to be written. Probably each and every part of the code that I wrote here, uh, that I've written here, has a lot of other code that is not shown to you. So there is a lot of abstraction that has been done in Python, and it makes it easy for the user like us to write code easy. However, in other programming languages, this may not be there. You might have to write the code uh, and then get the output that is necessary, but still it can be done. The idea that I'm trying to transfer here is that learning to do the same thing in different ways is very, very important, and also understanding what are the uh, modules or what are the supporting libraries that is available that makes your life easy is also very, very important. So once you understand this kind of input that is available, and you can use that input for handling the data from the user and also show the data back to the user after you have processed it. We'll be discussing about the processing down the line in the series of next videos, but here inputs are very, very important. Once you understand to process the input and give the data in the way the user wants, or give the data in the way you want the user to see, becomes way more easier. So with that said, I believe that you have been made a little more curious, and my important suggestion is that take these code that is available here and try to execute it first in your own execution environment. Try to read the code. I have not written the comments here. I want you to write the comments by trying to understand it. The moment you try to write comments, like if I'm going to say here, I can say it is returning the uh, text with the name value as a template. Here I know this because I can look at this particular line, and I can see that the name variable that has been used inside this particular function is getting replaced here, and there is something called as template function that is getting imported, and all these things are happening here. So I have created a comments like this. I want you to write the comments like this and understand that. It is going to be challenging, but once you start writing the comments, you will start researching about the background code that has been written here. You'll start going to the manual of that uh, particular submodule or the library, and start understanding why that particular code was written. What is it doing? Similarly, you can go here and you can take a look at the help files also. So with that said, I would like to close this video, and stay tuned for the next video where we'll start jumping into the important aspects of processing the text code, and then later the integers and various other data structures. With that said, see you guys. Have a great time.